Hi. Hello?
Hi, how's it going?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How about you?
It's good. Where are you connecting from?
I am in Chicago right now.
Oh my gosh, it's probably so cold. I'm in Florida and it's like the weather is beautiful and like it's like
Oh.
85. And so having to work indoors, I'm like, it's probably better for this, but just to be outside is just wonderful. But I'm so glad that we can join in and that we have some people who are coming to listen to us and kind of get some ideas about ID and the metaverse and all that fun stuff.
Definitely. Great. So, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and then I'll follow?
Of course. So I'm Kate, and I am the brains behind Johnston Course Design. We specialize in working with business trainers and business management and providing online services for them, especially online courses, taking their work and putting it into a digital medium. We also work with insurance companies and different things like that to make sure that their knowledge is on there. I've been very blessed to have been part of a project, the Ultimate Sales Manager, which is now, and it's getting ready to launch live. So we're very excited about that, my business partner and I. And then, other than that, I am a children's writer outside of my work in ID, and I wrote my first book in 2020, and I'm working on getting it published now this year. So that's just a little bit about me. Go ahead, let's learn a little bit more
Wow.
about you.
Wow, it sounds like, yeah, your hands are full.
Yeah, I like that life though. I love having a full life. I love just like being busy all the time. It'd be weird to settle down for me.
Okay, okay. Well, good. That's, yeah, it sounds like, yeah, then you're definitely living the life, your life. Cool. So, yeah, I'm Rosanna. I recently well, actually, 2020 started with Digital Abile, and it's
Hmm.
basically consultancy for professionals that want to create their own online courses. Um, and that's how it started. And then I, of course, started working with COVID hit, and it was a great
Hmm.
opportunity. Started working with companies and teachers and anyone that wanted to migrate their learning experiences from face to face to online. So it's basically consultancy on online learning experiences and making just engaging and interactive experiences.
That's awesome. Yeah, you probably had a ton of business, especially with the pandemic, moving everybody over and trying to get all the face-to-face stuff online. Because I know that there's a huge learning curve, especially with the way people used to train to now the way that we're approaching and even approaching in this Web3 meta kind of world. Everything is kind of just in a flux right now.
And it's moving so fast. Like I
Hmm.
remember 3 years ago, people would just tell me like, "But online learning, like, really? Are you still working on that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's eventually it's gonna pick up." And now everyone's like, "Okay, so I can see why you're still on that."
Oh yeah, I get that all the time where people are like, "But don't you think it's really gonna like come back to people?" And I'm like, "No, I don't see that because it's just like not business economical anymore. There's so much with technology that people can do and use. So it's kind of like why kind of go back in time when you can go forward and have it work with your life instead of against your life, which it did. Not saying against in like a pro con, but just it to have learning in the past, you'd have to go somewhere, you'd have to travel, you'd have to, especially within the with the clients that I work for, these huge conferences, you have to put money, time, energy, lodging, food, that if you can take that expense out, like why wouldn't you? And put that into maybe like growing the business, growing another arm, doing something like that. So I definitely agree with you. Like we're just full sales ahead and making sure that learning is online, it's equitable, and people can really get it wherever they're at, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Hmm.
Great. So now not only online, so now we're moving into this new metaverse, this concept. I'm still really just curious about what exactly we can do in the metaverse. So when I saw your post, I was like, okay, this is the perfect person to ask and just to have a chat with. Because I
Yeah.
can see how definitely like immersive experiences in the metaverse, but then I was like, but how do I do that? What are their skills that I need? And like, how do I, yeah, tell other people like, what do you need? Why do you need this? And what are the skills that you need to start creating in the metaverse? So maybe we can start by I've recently heard this or read this post that
Mm-hmm.
said like the metaverse, it's not a place, it's a space in time, or it's a time and space. So what is, let's start maybe with a concept of what is the metaverse for you?
So the way that I interpret the metaverse is a digital place where learning, business, and anything can be done. And you can connect with people all throughout the world. So when I think of it, I kind of think of it as a video game meets Zoom. So when I think of the video game component, I kind of harken back to like my childhood. I grew up in the 90s. I'm really going to age myself there. But in that time, we had these games that we would play, like Oregon Trail. We would play Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. We would play, I remember there's one, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was like these little explorers, and you had to like put the different things in cargo, and things would happen to them. And I think about that. And I think about how much it still resonates with me. Like I still have very fond memories of learning in that time. And I had got to play simulations, which is what the metaverse is. It's a simulation. It is Zoom and a video game. It's a simulated experience. So when I think of the possibilities of it, I think of it playing it kind of like a game we would play in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
except we can have that Zoom component. We have that component where we can talk to each other one on one, but instead of just talking, we can interact. Imagine if we were playing like Oregon Trail and we could actually like pick up the things or actually change out the wheel in our little oxen little carriage, or we actually saw one of our prairie mates have an issue and have to like respond in real time. And then I think, how does it take that experience that we had and loved, or I'm speaking about people in my generation, and how do we take that experience and make it not just playing as like kind of the puppeteer in the back, but a player in the game? So I think that it has that big component, and especially with more simulated and scenario-based learning. So much of instructional design now is really thinking about scenarios and creating simulations for learning to take place. And you brought up the question about like, how do you get into it? How do you learn into it? We as instructional designers, I believe, have a certain set of skills. We are trained teachers, we are trained instructors, we are trained in the pathways of how knowledge goes from point A to point B, or can very often splinter. Because of that, we are great to work in companion or in community with designers in the metaverse. So like gaming designers, maybe we work in tandem with people who are building things in that space. And we say, hey, I see you're building Stratford upon Avon to teach us Shakespeare unit. Cool, let me put let's put some language together. Let's put some like maybe a little plan together, you and I, and collaborate where I can give you the information and how it would scaffold for the person in that experience, while you can build the game, while you can build the rest of the experience for the person to learn. So there is a way in that. You're not doing it all, and it's not all going to be on your shoulders, but it is going to be in that tandem experience and in that community of collaboration.
Okay, I love that. I love that collaborating. I can see just people collaborating with like game developers, or yeah, in
Mm-hmm.
general, I would say game developers to develop those sorry, experiences. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So moving on to
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that what are the some of the skills? So what would you say, apart from knowing what the metaverse is about and how it can help you, what are some of the skills then that yeah, instructional designers and just professionals in the learning industry can start learning, or yeah, maybe working on?
Yeah, so I think that there's a really big need, and especially if you look at anywhere from like Indeed to I know that I get some Google updates on jobs to LinkedIn. There is a huge push right now if you're looking at the major players in tech for instructional design jobs. Meta
Mhm.
probably had, the last time I looked, 22 openings for instructional designers. So there is a huge push to get into that arena. There is a huge push for those skills. So if you're a candidate who is looking to bridge that gap, to work with those companies, to be in that space, to develop their portfolio better, it is, in my professional opinion, that your portfolio, your examples should show simulation and scenario-based learning. You should have those components ready in. Gameplay and gamification is another thing that needs to be included in those portfolios, because imagine your portfolio as an instructional designer is your calling card. It's how people find you, it's how people know your job, what you do, how you do it, how you organize information. So if you don't have an example on there that is showing that you can create a simulation scenario-based game or gamification type style learning event without some realistic data points as well, I mean, we create them for fun because we want them to be fun and engaging, but at the end, the data and having the user really change their behavior, output, thoughts, ideas, that's really what we're going for at the end of any learning program. So when we think about that, having an example on there, or even a designer I follow, when he posts his projects, he posts about his process, what he's thinking, how he thinks it, how he would use the data. So exploring those options in your portfolio gives you the best chance at those jobs, because you can already say, well, yeah, and as you can see from my portfolio, I've built this, this, and this, or I've taken this scenario for this market, for this demographic, and I've made this learning module, this learning experience to hit the need that was addressed.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think you mentioned those two things. For me, it was like, okay, so should we learn how to create the actual games? But like you said, no, we can definitely just collaborate with a game designer.
We don't need to learn how to code. We don't need to know. I think that everybody that's like thinking about this should have a rudimentary understanding of what the metaverse is, from the technology that fuels it to the VR, AR components to the Web3 and the capacity of it. Like I'm very intrigued. I know a lot of people talk about cryptocurrencies as a holding of money. But one of the big things that I've been really fascinated in the blockchain is the holding of smart contracts. I know we're probably 5-6 years down the line in this, but imagine if you're an instructional designer and you create, let's say, a learning experience, you co-collaborate with a game designer, or you co-collaborate in a space in a company like Meta or any of those that have Microsoft that have these digital lands. So let's say you are doing a like phonetic awareness for children 0 through 5. Imagine if in your learning component, you can put it on the blockchain with that smart contract. And that smart contract says if somebody purchases it, what's your royalty rate? How they can distribute that, so you can be in control of your work. Also, if you do more of the consulting side, if you have your own business, have your own shop, you then control your own creation, or you co-control it with a game graphics designer or a team. So it's really allows you to have more ownership in it. And it allows you to really think about how people are going to access what you have. And not everybody is going to want to like buy your program, but those that do, what is your residual rate? What is your smart contract? What is the business behind it? And I think that's something that we don't have to worry about now, but I think should keep on our radar in the next 5 to 10 years as something that we should be seeing and thinking about. How do we put that store of knowledge in, kind of like an NFT? How do they put in NFTs like a JPEG or multimedia file? Well, we make multimedia files. Well, we do that. Why can't we use that same technology, put that on OpenSea just like an NFT? And so we have to think of ourselves in a different space than maybe we've thought of ourselves previously.
Absolutely. I think that, with even with the example that you gave, NFTs, why couldn't you just sell your actual learning experience as an NFT?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see with the technology that you couldn't do it. The only thing I would say is that your file size, how much you're actually putting in that block. But again, those things can be regulated with time and the capacity of the chains. That's why I'm very interested in the Solana blockchain as how it can mold and kind of work within time. Now they're trying to do that more with financials, but then I think of it like 5-10 years down the line, if it's moving and things are, how do I get into that? How does my work get into that? How do I put my wares, almost like how merchants would bring their wares to a market? How do I do that in a digital space like the metaverse? I think those are things that we need to have on our radar, kind of be investigating and be alert to. Like I don't think you have to put so much time into it, but think of it more like a Google alert. Like if you put a Google alert on, it comes to your mailbox, kind of thing like that. Maybe that's something that as instructional designers, we need to start pushing ourselves to believing, to thinking, to challenging our design protocols and how we develop things so that it fits in this new frontier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I'm gonna look up that La Solana token.
Yeah,
Is
so
it
the
a
Solana
token?
has a different, the reason I like it is it has a different validating chain than most blockchains. So it validates, there's a great video on YouTube to kind of do the difference, and not to get like super dorky on it, but basically instead of validating by work, it validates by date, and it validates in like a different like three system. Like the best way I can describe it is like three people send a card at the same time. It can arrive at different times, but if it's all dated like January 3rd, then it approves it.
Oh, okay.
But the way that it moves and the way that it can be manipulated, I know I haven't done as much research on it, but I know Polkadot, that crypto, has a similar type. And so when we think about metaverse, we have to think of that crypto space, because that's what's keeping those transactions, our learning, that's what's housing it. So we can't not like say like, oh, that's just, for finance people, or that I don't need to know that. You kind of do, because that's like your file safe system. Like you would
Yes,
think about your computer and your hard drive. Why would you not think about your storage in the meta?
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And why, yeah, like you said, why in finance and not in instructional design, in
Yeah.
learning?
I mean, there's so many
Because,
different things. I mean, like you see now, like, I mean, not to just bring up popular culture, but you see people who are spending like millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in like Decentraland and this and that. And it's like, well, okay, like you're going to go into this meta universe, you're going to put your goggles on, you're going to walk around, and then they talk about these NFT galleries. And it's like, well, wouldn't it be logical too that you would go look around and go learn about something? Like, wouldn't that
yeah,
be, if you're in the
yeah,
metaverse, wouldn't you like that? That's a logical step. So if that's a logical step, then we as instructional designers need to be logical in our approach to this space and what it can offer and how we can move forward in a direction that best suits us and the
yeah.
profession at large.
Okay, okay. So I guess it would be a matter of adoption now. We have the tools.
Yeah.
We know we are learning how to use it. So it's time to, yeah, for
I mean,
adoption.
we're very much in the infancy. We're very much in like the Pong stage of video game. You know how video games started with Pong? That's kind of where we are in the terms of the metaverse. But, and that's why I always say, like, you need to keep it on your radar. You need to be thinking about it, because it's kind of like being back in the 80s, like late mid 90s, thinking about email. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I mean, we might have an internet. I don't know why I would ever need to, send an email when I can pick up the phone. And now think of it like, we're like, can you just send an email? Like, can you just put it in the email? Like, I'll check it. I promise I'll get back to you. Like, and we've made that shift in what, 15, 20, maybe 25 years.
yeah,
What is the shift that we're going to make now from the beginning of it to now in 25, 30 years? And what is our positioning in that future? That's a very big chasm that we need to think about and really kind of determine while we have the ability and the choice to determine it.
absolutely, absolutely. So great. We spoke about
Yeah.
what it is. Why should we, yeah, be aware of it and start learning about it? What do you tell those people that tell you, yeah, well, but that's not, like you said, from 5 to 10 years? What are the benefits that can bring me and my learners? Like, what's the difference between an actual online course right now and a course out in the metaverse?
Well, I've had this conversation, and I would say, have you been into an elementary classroom lately? Because as an elementary teacher, I say this because we make lessons with Google Glasses now. Where
Mm,
when I was teaching, I left the classroom about 2 years ago. But we would do like we had a Native Americans lesson, which we were talking to the kids about Native Americans and their habitats and stuff. And then we put on the Google Glasses. We take them out into the field, where they would play, And we would say, okay, go interact with what you see, and then come back and tell us what you found, or what think cool things. So you see these kids with the headsets on and all this stuff. And if people are like, well, we're not going in that way, I'd be like, why don't you come? I'll take you to my old school and like show you what kids are doing now. And kids now in this like digital era are so in depth. How many kids do you know play Roblox? How many
Wow.
kids do you know that like play Minecraft or things like that, where they're in these worlds already? And they may have friends who are in these worlds who maybe are like they've never met before, but who they play with every night at 7 o'clock. We're already there. We're just not there in the feeling it yet. We're not in that like Ready Player One kind of where we can really interact with it, but we're getting there. So I would say to people like, okay, I find your opinion valid, but let's come and see what younger generations are doing and see if that has any change or any redetermination on what you talking about. People who are going to experience the metaverse who are probably like our age, or we're probably looking at like, I would say like 11 and under. This is really the clientele that's really going to have it, because imagine if you're 11 now and think of the World Wide Web that took about 20 years, you'd be 31. Like,
Yeah.
and how many companies do we work for now, or people work for now, who you get on Zoom with the office in like Tokyo, or maybe you get
Yeah.
with the London people, or maybe you get with people from all over the world. So what's the difference between you hop on Zoom or you hop on in this virtual space where you can actually like write on the board and like, oh yeah, Tommy, like that was a great idea. Like, pop out for a minute and send that email to everybody, or pop in and send it through your glasses. Like, it's a natural evolution. Like
Yeah.
it's not, it's already here. It's just in baby steps, and we just have to wake up to seeing it.
Absolutely. I love that you're on this team because you're
Mm-hmm.
you're like you're fighting those that don't want this to happen.
I mean, I don't think that there's a fight. I think that there's, and I don't want it to say like an othering. There's not a, this, they're not a, you're with it or you're not with it, or, or you love it or you don't love it. There depends on how tech literate you are. And
Mm.
I've even said this with some friends of mine. Technology is kind of like pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaceuticals can help people. You go to the doctor, they prescribe you medicine. Pharmaceuticals can also hurt. We have an opioid crisis here in the States. Like, it's a two-edged sword. Technology can be that too. It can be helpful. It can connect people. It can share ideas. It can do all those things. It can be hurtful too, with like tech addictions and things like that. We're going to We see this now with younger kids, but we have to be cognizant as we move forward into the psychological parts of it. So when we think of it, we can't think of it in this binary good bad, this is great, this isn't great. We have to really think of it as this like kind of gray area that we have to figure out, and we have to talk to leaders who are in it, or maybe generations like digital natives who have gone through it and like the most entry level way. Like, what do you think is the best? I mean, for right now, I don't have an answer to that, and I don't know if anybody does, but I would love to talk with and collaborate with people who could make more sense of that gray area between good and bad, and to have it be used in the way that can best connect versus best destroy.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of any companies already using the metaverse?
So the metaverse, not as much. I know using that entry level technology. So a lot of AR, VR right now is, I know, being utilized in schools. So that's always a great thing. Augmented reality is also, you can see it in like different Zooms, and like, I mean, I kind of think of it like, this is kind of a pandemic joke, but there was a Zoom conference where the judge had this like little like cat face. I don't know if you saw that, and he like couldn't get the filter off, and he's like, I am not a cat, I am a judge. Okay, we all remember this, and it was like so embarrassing. He's like, I don't know, my daughter did this. Like, so we're already playing in that field now. So when it comes to the metaverse, that's where we more need to have that like like I remember when I was a kid, like when I got on first, it was I wanted to get in the AOL chat room because all my friends were in the AOL chat room. That was fun, right? And then I wanted to download music off LimeWire because that was so cool that you could like get your favorite tunes on your thing. You have to go to Blockbuster Music. Okay, I'm really dating myself here. But then that fun started into, oh, I can build a web page in high school. Like I thought that was like I was on another level when I took that class. It's like you can actually have your own page and anyone in the world can see it. That's kind of how we're getting with Meta. Like it's going to be like, oh, this is fun. Oh, like kind of how we are now with the Oculus glasses. Like, look, I played like a fun sword game, like, and as we start to adopt it more in fun, then we adopt it more in practicality. So as we're thinking about instructional design, that's I think too that goes back to our first point that it has to be fun. Like learning has to be these scenarios, it has to be these situations because that's fun. We learn with play, we learn with fun. And if we keep going down that road, then the adoption comes into the other practical parts of like, okay, now we're in it for business, or now we're in it for the meeting, or now we're all going to get on this because we need to like get ears with everybody and this is the easiest way. So yeah, I think that it kind of can go like that. And that's, I think, where we're at. And I would hope that we are more mindful as companies, as entrepreneurs, as contractors, as instructional designers in general, to at least know where the road's going. It's kind of like GPS. You only know so many miles ahead of you, but you can open up the map and see the road ahead of you. That's kind of the road we're traveling. We're just, probably like 5 hours out, which in our case is probably like 5 years out. But you still want to know where you're traveling, and especially if you're going to put all this work in. Like instructional designers put so much work into their, I mean, you can attest to it. Like these learning, they take hours and hours and thought and iteration that, you want to kind of protect that little art, you want to protect what you've made. So that's kind of where I see it and kind of why we need to be mindful and thinking about it in terms of the longevity of this career and the longevity of kind of what we do for a living.
Definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this past 3 or 4 years, it's just been one new skill or one new tech that you can absolutely incorporate into instructional design and learning
Mm-hmm.
experiences. I feel like, sorry, it just gets overwhelming. And that's why you see some people that are just maybe pushing back a little bit on this. But like you said, maybe we're 5 hours or 5 years away, but we're definitely going to get there.
We're definitely getting there. So in the meantime, it's kind of like I think of it as driving. I just took a long trip up into northern parts of Florida, and it's kind of like that. Like I knew I had 5 hours to go from where I started to where I was landing. But I knew in that first hour, what did I need to do? I needed to make sure I gassed in the car. I needed to make sure my tires were going. I need to make sure like my podcast was all ready to go to listen to. Okay. So I had these things. So as instructional designers, if we're following that same path and that same trajectory of that 5-year mark, right now our basis is no scenario-based learning, no simulated based learning. Get an idea of that AR, VR component. Start playing around with that in your designs. And it doesn't have to be for clients. This is not something that you need to push on people to like love and adopt and all that. This is something for your portfolio you can put on there, because I bet you in 2 or 3 years, they're going to be like, oh, wow. Yeah. That was actually from a couple years ago. Oh, I saw that you did that. Oh, why did you think of that? Like, oh, it's dated in 2022. Oh, you can do that now. Oh yeah, because I've been practicing. Like I've been doing like the layups, like on the court. I've been preparing, I've been listening, I'm ready. And imagine that jump between your entry level or like a couple years in, and then, oh yeah, well, yeah, we actually know that she can do it because we've seen her examples of it, and she was doing it before everybody else was. Everybody wants to like be with the kid that can do the cool stuff, right? So how can we position ourselves as instructional designers to kind of be the kids that can do the cool stuff?
Definitely. You want to be, you always want to be ahead of time and just ahead of the math.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even too, like, even in the articulate suite, there is so much that you can add in, or you can go into like They have that articulate e-learning heroes that you can even just read through what some of these creators are doing. Like
Mm.
we can't negate that we have a collective of instructional designers either through LinkedIn or through e-learning heroes. I know that there's a couple other private communities on Facebook. We have collective think. We just need to put that into collective action and using the tools that we know and using the components that we can see into the future of where we need to be and who we need to kind of learn and gather on our team. That's the best way we can situate ourselves for what's going to take place in about 5 to 7 years.
Definitely.
But yeah, what about
Um,
you? Have you thought about the metaverse and adding to it, or is this just something you kind of heard and like the word was there, or have you taken a lot of thought to it? Kind of, I would love to hear like where your thoughts are. Um, in terms of it, or what you've gotten out of it, or anything like that.
yeah, so I basically started learning about it
Mm-hmm.
with the whole trend of VR in e-learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of just games in general, video games. So for me, it just made sense. Why wouldn't you learn while you're playing a game? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was, I could see, of course, the benefits. I could see how it would actually just eventually well, it is already. We already have VR and AR in learning. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was more of like, when will it be adopted? Um, yeah, more by more
The
companies.
when. Yeah, you saw the
Yeah,
writing on the wall too. It's just the
yeah,
the when.
yeah.
And then yeah, and I mean, and I applaud you for thinking of that because I see on these communities that I just talked about where people are like, well, they're like, move away from click-through slides, and I want to be like, who is still doing a click-through slide? Like maybe for like very technical information, like if you're
Yeah,
building a rocket ship to like Mars for Tesla, click through by all
yeah,
means. Like your clientele is going, they want something else. But and I think now, and I'm like, it most everything with the current climate that we're going to, it all has to be scenario. It all has to be simulation because that's what the tech world is preparing us. And we're dependent on technology. We're dependent on these people that make these platforms, when we think about it. So we just have to create the product that works with that. And if that's the way that tech's going, that's where our career trajectory is going.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, yeah, I would like to see more professionals. So just like you
Mm-hmm.
talking about it, implementing it, inviting other people to learn about it, and also more companies just asking for that. So we want this. I don't know how many companies I work with, and they just tell me, "Oh, I want e-learning," and I'm like, "Okay, so let's walk me through what you have in
E-learning is
mind."
like saying I want food. It's like, yeah, okay, okay.
And then they're like,
What
we want a bunch
kind?
of videos and just people to go through the videos. And I'm like, that's not e-learning. That's just what you said. That's just a bunch of videos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they just have these expectations that they're going to get like a real VR simulation. But then of course they don't really want to put the work into it. So if I want to see more of those companies asking
Yeah.
for immersive experiences, VR, eventually, yeah, learning in the metaverse. But I also, yeah, I would love to see more professionals like you just shouting and just telling people we need to get into this as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're just going to get left behind, or yeah, the
Well,
learning
yeah,
space
and
is
I
not
mean,
going to evolve fast enough.
yeah, and I think sometimes people, and just in general, just making a thing, we have a very hard time forecasting. We have a very hard time picking trends. We have a very hard time kind of seeing the future. And I really resonated with your last example that you gave, how people are like, I want e-learning. Okay, I just want these videos. I want, and that's I think what is one of the challenges of our profession is we can do so very much, right? We can make, build, design, whatever we want, right? But it's getting what they want in their mind out onto our learning management tool or into our design. Now, that's where I kind of was thinking about this. So like as we go through the metaverse, right, there's gonna be probably companies and people are like, oh, you know, I saw this thing called an NFT and I really want one for my company. Can you design or like a I really want a like a small experience. Can you make like a Beeple, but like people go through it? You know, people want only what they get the idea that they want. And it's for us as instructional designers to lead them through that narrative. Like, no, you don't really want an NFT, but that's a one picture or one element. You want an experience. You want multiple ones, multiple things you can go through. Same with your videos. You don't want a video. You want something that's engaging. You want something that relates to your audience. You want something that it doesn't feel stressful. It doesn't feel a thing that you have to do, another thing. No one wants to feel like that. And no learning should feel like that. And I think that's the great part with the metaverse is we can do business and then we can be like, all right, bye, see ya, and then go to like Decentraland and hang out with our friends or do those fun things. So it's really just kind of not telling people what they want, but kind of ushering in like, have you thought of this? Or have you thought it from this perspective? Or why don't you just try it? You know, like almost like a Costco sample. Why don't you just try it? If you
Yeah.
don't like it,
Like,
you don't like it, you know? And moving people through because and then too, especially there's a large generation of people who have grown up kind of with technology and kind of not with technology who are in the middle end of their careers. They're kind of like, well, what's in this for me? Like I've built a career, I've done these things. Like, why do I need this? You know, and I don't know if you face that. I've definitely faced that in this. Like, well, I already built this. Why do I need to be here?
mm,
Because the people who are going to want to invest, the people who are going to want to develop are coming up. And that's
mm,
the language they've grown up speaking. They've grown up speaking digital languages. They've grown up kind of, and when I say digital languages, like I think of my cousin, her daughter is actually on here too, and she's got two kids. And I think of her son, he plays all these games all the time online. And I think I'm like, you're not building it. You're building it so your legacy is for this kid. You're
mm,
building it for him. He's like 11. You're not building it for your 35-year-old person who's, you know, midway through their career. And I always say to people like that are thinking about it and like, well, what's in it for me? Like, how can I make it better? Is you want to live forever, right? Most people kind of have that kind of vibe. That's a legacy. Making your work into an online experience, making your thoughts and ideas live forever. That's where this little kid's gonna be like, oh my God, you know, yeah, I'm in this new job and oh, this is cool. Oh, let's open up this learning experience. Oh man, cool. This is exactly what I needed. Oh, and this guy's like telling me exactly like, and I can click through it and I can learn. And think that generation's already learning online. They've already been locked down. They've already had to have Zoom. That's their world.
yeah.
So if you're thinking of like your, you know, your not even your customer base, but your future employees, you've got to start speaking their language. And that's their language. Their language is online.
Yeah.
And so that I think is a big, powerful tool that we need to really think about as instructional designers when we approach these projects with clients or approach it with businesses is like, when you're building something like this, it's not for you right now. It can be used for you right now, and that's great. But it's meant for that generation. It's meant for the ones who are coming up. And they're going to look at you through your social media, through anything, maybe probably through your collective crypto wallets and say, is this the company I want to work for? And maybe they'll find a learning design and they'll be like, oh my gosh, they were ahead of it. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to work for them. I want to build that out. Or like, yeah, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but now I want to be an instructional designer because I can build this in the metaverse and have people experience my learning. It's a different way of looking at the world. And that's
Yeah.
okay. It's just we kind of have to work with people to get them there.
Yeah. Definitely. Slowly just showing them what are the
Yeah.
benefits.
And we can't be afraid of utilizing play. That's initially, like, imagine that's how kids initially learn, you know, and adults, we still learn through play.
Yeah.
We learn through playing with our friends and going out places and learning about them. We learn through playing around on our computer, what works and what doesn't. We learn about playing around with our garden, if we can grow something or not. That intrinsic play, and maybe that's another avenue to explore with potential clients is like, yeah, you want a course, but like, don't you want them to like play with it? Don't you want them to
Yep.
like be engaged with it? Don't you want them to get something out of it more than just information? Like if you're going to ask 3 to 4 hours of somebody to go through a learning event, don't you want them to like enjoy it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we get so information heavy, we forget that play and really the enjoyment of time is so critical in developing these types of courses and in developing what we do as professionals and as instructional designers.
Absolutely. I think
Mm-hmm.
usually the disconnect is they want this. I want you to teach them all of this, but they don't get the engagement part and the part where
Mm-hmm.
you actually need to maybe live through the experience, like through a simulation, or just interact with something like a game to solidify that learning better.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent in like PowerPoint, making a deck is not learning. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. It's just information. It just sits there with like some, mundane graphic that nobody is engaged with. And like
Yeah.
when you can make it where you're like, people are like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. I never thought of that visual representation. Or, I loved when I saw that image and then it made sense to me because I could play around with it at the end. And I think too, just the utilization of tools available is it's not a readily available tool. Like think of Articulate, like outside of the instructional design community, it's not like you're like, yeah, man, I'm so excited. I'm a, investment banker and I got Articulate. Like what? No, that, people are used to what they have. And I mean, I have to applaud Microsoft. They're so great in getting their, stuff out. Same with Google, that's what people know. So
Yeah.
imagine we as instructional designers have to like sell them on this new tech that they're like, oh, well, I don't know. We don't use it for investment banking. But that's where we say, hey, well, you do build PowerPoints and stuff, and this is similar. It's on like steroids, It's
Yeah.
just this is the Olympics of that. This is just like the kids playing handball in the backyard, like they do similar things, and I think that's great too for us as instructional designers that we still get to be educators at heart. We still get to share. We still get to, work in tandem with people. It's just we have to kind of lean in more to them and guide them through the journey, and especially of like what learning and what training will become. People don't particularly like to change all that much, and we just have to say it's okay, baby steps. Let's go through and you know, let's make it happen.
Definitely. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, you're just giving that message with a lot of positivity, with
Yeah.
great analogies. I'm loving your analogies.
Oh, well, thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So just to wrap it up,
Yeah.
what would you recommend? So maybe,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, overall, or maybe if you want to go more into detail, what would you recommend to someone that's maybe it's a they're starting in instructional designing and they're like, okay, what is something that I definitely need to learn? And of course, especially with the metaverse, and maybe for someone that's been in the game for a while, they're trying to stay, updated. They're trying to upskill or reskill. What would you
Perfect. Two
recommend?
two different things. So if you're entering the field now and you're thinking about meta, you're thinking about this digital space, maybe you're like 22 right out of college, I would say learn instructional design and tandem as you play video games. Really spend time in the gaming sphere. Listen in on Twitch, watch gamers play, watch those behavioral parts because that behavior, that physical behavior that you can watch in a Twitch stream
Mm-hmm.
will be behavior that you use to your benefit in your instructional designs. The way that people rationalize like their player games. Have you ever watched like a Twitch? I kind of am
Yeah.
starting to get into that. Yeah,
No,
I
no,
mean,
I have. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just saw you light up. You're like, oh yes, Twitch. So if you're in it and you're watching these people, and like if you're probably like me, you can hear them being like, oh yeah, I got into this part, or like our play here is we're gonna do da 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 da. That's all data that you can use. That's all how people think. That's all how they rationalize gameplay, right? So if you're 21, 22, you should be learning instructional design basics, learning from people, learning really like the art of the design, as I like to say, the art of what we do and how we do it, but
Mm-hmm.
also like tune into Twitch a couple times. Watch some like high level Twitchers, maybe watch some up and comers. Really get into like that modality, because that in 20, 30 years, that's all you're going to be doing, but you're going to have that critical design piece to work in that field. I'd also say too, just to be following maybe on Medium, some articles that really go into Web 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was going through my program at Georgia State to be an instructional designer, we read a lot about 2.0 and like Web 2.0, how it developed, what was the rationale, what are app-based programs, how we can use those to our best advantage. Well, that's going to be obsolete in 5 years. So really getting into those like white papers, getting into those academic papers, getting into anything that you can in terms of Web 3.0, blockchain, AR, VR, and how they all relate to each other. That what I say is at the beginning. And I still do that. Like, and I'm, you know, and I've been an educator for a while, instructional designer for not so long, and I'm doing those things. So I'm not preaching something that, you know, I'm not doing myself. I'm not one of those people, but that is something that I definitely recommend. If you're in the field and you've been in it for a while, you're seasoned, you've been creating things, I would challenge you in that particular frame to find a mentor, to find somebody who is in a similar position, or if not
Mm-hmm.
higher, or if not lower, who is doing something completely different in instructional design.
Mm-hmm.
So if, let's say, like I work for, like I have a friend of mine who's an instructional designer. She's getting mentored right now by a woman at UPS who works at the UPS instructional design, and a lot of the things that they know are still privy. She just is a great friend of mine and kind of loops me in. But having that while she is doing it on a smaller end, she is learning from her, and then her mentor is talking to her, and she's talking to her, and they're both exchanging these ideas. And even though she's smaller, she knows maybe new tech. She maybe knows, like my friend's really great at like the system, like how systems work together, how the system of learning is applied, like those mind maps and all of those things. That's her. She can tell you exactly when you're gonna click this screen to this screen, and like before, and I like the time when we collaborate, I'm like, you know, they're gonna go there, you know, like, but that's how her brain works. And her mentor is very into the aesthetics of it. So even them, they have these great conversations. LinkedIn is a great way to collaborate. I found a lot of collaborators there that I've been learning from. I've been learning from a lot of Facebook groups. I have friends who are instructional designers, and a great way to, like, if you're in that, like you've been there for a while, say to your friends who are in it, say, hey, what groups do you follow that you find value from?
Mm-hmm.
Or what authors on Medium do you find value from? And people, that's because you're not asking them for any trade secrets. So people really will like want to do that. That's an easy email. Like, oh, check out blah, 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 blah. Or like, send me a link of the last article you read.
Yeah.
How many, if you were asked that, how would you respond to them and send them that? Yeah, it's a really easy thing. It's
Absolutely.
not anything like you would, you know, but all of those things, that collaborative part, that I think is something sometimes we get in our own lane, we get on our own projects, we get on our own, that we don't see some of the bigger picture. And in order to be successful, moving down into a line where the bigger picture is a completely new environment, it's not even like a completely new technology, it's a completely new environment. We've all got to work together, and we've all got to kind of group think it out and group plan so that we know that we're ready to approach that in the most professional, creative, and educational way possible.
Definitely.
So that's what I would say. That would be my advice. And if you're on your way out and you're not an old instructional designer, but a seasoned one, I would say start pouring into those younger generations. Start teaching them the things that you learn the hard way. Be that mentor, be that guide, because there are there are people who are younger than you who don't even know that they need that information and are dying for you to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I would recommend in all those stages. And I added the last one just because I think that too, people who are at the end of their career want that legacy. They want to know that they are seen and heard. And so making sure their ideas and maybe the traditional foundational skills are really implemented with those prior two generations that we talked about, I think is a really great way to really give back and develop a legacy within this career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. they hold the knowledge, so it's just a matter of
Mm-hmm.
passing it down and then implementing it with new tech and all these new
Yeah, and we
environments.
can't be afraid to be learning. I mean, we as instructional designers are innate learners. We're innately
Hmm.
curious about our world, so we can't stop. If we stop, then our clients stop. Then the
Yep.
people that take our lessons stop. So
Yeah.
we have to embody that. And that I think is what draws this group of people to this job in general, is because we want to constantly know more. We want to constantly learn. And I hope too with this, like even with technology now, having these discussions about learning, about what kind of like where should go, what I should do, it only benefits. Because
Yeah.
even if you get something and you don't agree with it, you're like, okay, I'm not going to use it, or I am going to use it.
Yeah.
It's really up to you to gauge that, but at least sharing that can bring everybody, up and really engage more instructional designers, and maybe even inspire new ones into the field. You never know with sharing just what you do, how it can affect or not affect somebody. So why
Yeah.
not take the gamble positively?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Kate, thank you for inspiring me and hopefully
Oh my gosh,
inspiring a
thank
lot
you
of
so much for
people.
having me. I'm so glad we got to do this. This has been so fun. I want to like message you and do more of these because this is just fun just to like chat and get to know more and kind of just talk about topics in the field and go from there. I know that finding instructional designers is kind of sometimes finding like a needle in a haystack. There aren't many of us. So the ones that are, I
No.
can tell, like you, who are really inspired in the field, really, I know fuel me as well as fuel others who are really wanting to make a name for this industry and in this field in general.
Yeah. I think it's also about finding people that are just moving forward with what's
Yeah.
going on with the technology. They're just, yeah. I've seen a lot of learning experiences that are, like you said, they're just boring. They're just like a stack of PowerPoints, and I can see where they're coming from. I can appreciate that. But for me, that's not learning anymore.
Yeah.
So every time I see someone just bringing something new to the table, talking about the merge of technology and learning, that's just, for me, that's, yeah, that's the way I want to go.
Oh yeah. I'll leave you with this point because it was something that I heard. I was on a
Mm-hmm.
call one time with a business partner of mine, and
Mm-hmm.
he had invited a man to kind of go through this course that we built for feedback and things like this. And this man has been an SVP of some major companies, is a very, very well known, lots of accolades behind his name and things like that. And he said something, and it's always resonated with me. He goes, my time when I work is worth,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, $500 an hour, something like that, some asinine, crazy number. He goes, so if I'm going to give 4 hours of my time to learn this, that's 2 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Is this worth 2 grand for me to go through?
Wow. That's,
And I
wow.
was like,
Okay.
and I sat there for a second, and he's like, and I don't mean to be rude. And he's like, and I don't mean this to be like, I'm so much better. He's like, but when you create something, if that's my time per hour and I'm your target audience, in that initial hour, I have to make that $200 up or that
Yeah.
$500 up because
Yeah.
that time is money for me.
Yeah.
And that has always been with my learning because ever since he said that, it triggered something in my head that was like, I had, not that I wasn't taking it seriously or not that I was building those kind of boring PowerPoints that, we've talked about how they're kind of terrible and awful. But if that's whatever your price per hour is your course worth that to your audience at their price point? So if your audience is executive level, is it worth the $300 to $500 an hour?
Yeah.
If it's not, then start it again because
Absolutely.
they're never going to recommend you. They're never going to hire you. They're never going to do anything if it's not in that initial hour, if they have not gotten a return on their investment.
That's,
And that's
wow.
just something I think that all instructional designers need to come through is that audience. Audience is collateral, is their
Mm-hmm.
time, and how much they get paid for their time is how much that we should be really investing in each part of the learning component. Because again, instructional design, whether they like it or not, is a business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our people who we train are business professionals. So we have to
Yeah.
make that training worth their time. And that's, I think, again, to loop back into the metaverse, that's where that really shines, because we can engage that time per hour, but we can also engage them in this world of learning and this like experience that can even say, hey, that was actually, your training was actually worth more than my hourly rate.
That would
Imagine
be,
that.
yeah, that would
Imagine
be
that.
the
If you have a
goal.
C-suite individual that was like, yeah, I am so glad I did that. That was, I, now my whole team has to go through it
Yeah.
because I got an $800 experience and learned an $800 per hour than I did 500.
What a
So when
great
we
point.
when we think of things like that and we put it in those quantitative parts and we think like our audience does, we can then go forward, move forward, engage deeper, and retain clientele, which is so huge, especially when we're having these big asks, like we talked early in the hour about getting them on this new technology and looking at this new way of doing, way of thinking, way of providing the service.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kate.
Yeah, no
You've
problem
just
at
been
all. Thank
pouring,
you.
you've been pouring, yeah, just great tips and just, yeah, great information and
Well,
insights.
thanks.
Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
anything, anytime. I'd love to do these. If we can do these more often, this was so fun. And thank you so much for the questions. And I got to come up with questions next time. I didn't mean to dominate, but I get really passionate about where this is going, because if you can see the writing on the wall, man, like we're on a great trip. We're heading to a wonderful destination, which we have authority in, which we have creativity in, which we have intellectual, not dominance, but intellectual like superiority, because we know how to put the things together. We know
We're
how
ahead.
things are
Yeah.
supposed to work. We really got a great thing. So we've got to learn more. We've got to invest more. And we got to have more of these talks where we get on there and share and do and really think about our position and the way technology is going. Well,
Absolutely.
anyway, thank you so very much for this time. I hope that it was a great little power hour for anybody, and hope we can schedule another one soon.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
All righty, wonderful. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You too. Bye
Bye.
bye, Kate.